What do they mean when they ask that? Deciphering question words and finding the question stem are two tools that the student can have in order to understand what teachers are asking and why. Essay exam questions are difficult to write well. Luckily, professors have a fairly standard set of vocabulary words to give students instructions and hints on the exam. However, some students aren't so lucky because they don't really know how to interpret that vocabulary. Let's look at some common exam vocabulary words and learn what they mean. Then we'll analyze the question structure. Question words are often tied to Bloom's taxonomy of thinking that we saw earlier. Remember that pyramid? Question words should direct the type of essay you write. If the teacher's asking for a compare-contrast and you give an analysis, you're not going to do well. Question words, unfortunately, are not always used clearly by question writers, so make sure you ask the professor if it's unclear. For instance, some teachers might say compare when they actually mean compare and contrast. Be sure you're clear on that. Here's Bloom's taxonomy with small explanation of what it means and examples of test question words. Each type of thinking has corresponding question words, though some question words can mean different things, and you'll have to figure that out from context. For instance, to evaluate is to make and defend judgments based on evidence. Question words that ask for evaluation include things like argue, assess, compare, contrast, criticize, defend, evaluate, judge, interpret, predict, and support. Synthesis questions ask you to take ideas from a variety of sources to create new ideas or propose solutions. Examples of these question words include categorize, combine, design, formulate, plan, propose, revise, and of course, synthesize. Analyze asks you to break complex text down into its parts to see how it is organized or to support your generalizations. Examples of test question words include analyze, differentiate, examine, interpret, outline, question, relate, select, test, or trace. Apply questions ask you to apply knowledge from one text to a new situation or text. Question words for apply include apply, demonstrate, illustrate, prepare, show, sketch, solve, and use. Comprehend questions ask you to explain what a text means. These question words include discuss, explain, express, generalize, give examples of, paraphrase, summarize, or translate. Know questions, knowledge questions, ask you to remember your previous knowledge on a topic. These question words might include describe, identify, list, name, recall, reproduce, or state. Once you understand what question words mean, you should understand question stems. The question stem is the main part of the question. Everything else are helpful hints and instruction. Here's an example that was asked in an English 1A class for an essay exam on one book about the history of modernism, the period from 1880 to 1920. Let's read the question and find the question stem. In his book, The Culture of Time and Space, Stephen Kern quotes Gertrude Stein's comparison between World War I and Cubism, page 288, and then spends much of the chapter on the Cubist War, explaining how the key concepts of his book, time, space, speed, distance, and so forth, were explained in the war. Write an essay in which you 1. Summarize Kern's main arguments in this chapter, and 2. Make an argument in which you agree or disagree that this is a good way to describe and understand the war. Essays must refer to specific examples from Stephen Kern's The Culture of Time and Space and must document paraphrases and quotations in MLA style. It's fairly clear from looking at this question that the students were allowed to bring in either extensive notes or a copy of the book in the exam. Otherwise, the teacher would not have referred to specific page numbers. So that's useful to know. We've highlighted the question stem. Write an essay in which you, number 1, summarize Kern's main arguments in this chapter, and number 2, make an argument in which you agree or disagree that this is a good way to describe and understand the war. The first part of the question is asking you to summarize, and the second part of the question is asking you to make an argument in which you agree or disagree. In other words, evaluate. Take a position. Once we separate that out as the main part of the question, we can look at what hints the teacher has given and what expectations she's listed. The expectation is that we will use specific examples from the book. And the hints are that this chapter specifically talked about a person named Gertrude Stein, World War I, and Cubism. Presumably, if we've read the book, we know what those things are. It also lists some key ideas or concepts: time, space, speed, distance, and so on. That will help us write our summary so we can make sure that we don't leave anything out. That's actually a lot of tips. Here's another example. In this exam, the students read a book and saw a film clip about the younger generation. The film they watched was Better Luck Tomorrow, and the book they read was called Generation Me: Why Today's Young Americans Are More Confident, Assertive, Entitled, and More Miserable Than Ever Before. Let's read the question and look at the question stems. After watching the clip from Better Luck Tomorrow, think about how this film, particularly the clip shown in class, relates to Jean M. Twenge's argument in Generation Me: Why Today's Young Americans Are More Confident, Assertive, Entitled, and More Miserable Than Ever Before. In writing this essay, you will need to demonstrate that you fully understand Twenge's argument and can apply it to an analysis of the film clip. Use specific details from both the film clip and the book to support your points. You might want to devote a paragraph to summarizing her argument to prove that you fully understand it. Write an essay in which you answer one of the following questions. Option 1, Option 2, and Option 3. Option 1. In what ways does Better Luck Tomorrow provide evidence for Twenge's argument? Option 2. In what ways does Better Luck Tomorrow show the flaws in Twenge's argument? Or, if you want to get really fancy, Option 3. In what ways does Better Luck Tomorrow both provide evidence for and show the flaws in Twenge's argument? The teacher's given 3 options, and that can be extremely helpful for students. It lets you take any position you want on the topic. However, it is extremely important that you make a choice and go with it. Too often, students start writing about Option 1, get frustrated halfway through, and start their essay entirely over with Option 2. This is merely a waste of time and will not result in a better essay. Even if you do change your mind halfway through, stick with what you planned for your essay and go with it. So once we take one of the question stems, let's say Option 2. In what ways does Better Luck Tomorrow show the flaws in Twenge's argument? That is an application and an evaluation. We are asked to apply what we know from the film to the argument in order to analyze or evaluate the argument. That's a pretty higher level question. The teacher's given us a lot of hints. Demonstrate that you understand the argument. So this is more about the book than about the film. Devote a paragraph to summarizing her argument. That helps us a lot with structure. Basically, the teacher is saying, have an introduction, have a summary paragraph, have a paragraph that offers your argument, or 2 or 3, and then have a conclusion. By carefully reading the instructions, we can get a lot more information about how to structure our paper and what it should cover. Looked at test questions, and now you're ready for the exam. You know how to handle test anxiety by preparing well. You know how to understand exam format and expectations. You know how to use charts to analyze, synthesize, and evaluate course readings and lectures. And you understand a little bit more about why professors write questions the ways that they do. One of the most common errors students make in taking essay exams is not using the writing process. In your English class, you've been learning about brainstorming, outlining, drafting, revising, editing, and proofreading. You should take the time to do all these steps during the essay exam. Of course, you do need to budget your time wisely. For a 2-hour exam, typically you will budget your time something like this. Starting at hour 1, the first 10 to 15 minutes will be spent brainstorming, Make sure you really read the question, underline or highlight the question stem, reread the hints and expectations, and then use whatever brainstorming technique works best for you. Listing, clustering, free writing. 5 minutes of free writing spent at the beginning of the exam is time extremely well spent. Next, you want to write an outline of your ideas. This should not be a formal outline, but a quick bullet point outline to say what you will do in each paragraph. It's a good idea at this point to stop after you're finished with your outline, reread the question, and make sure you've covered everything you're expected to. Then spend your time writing. Finish off hour 1 writing, and then in hour 2, you will write. This gives you quite a long time to write, probably about 70 minutes to write that first draft. You will want to leave at least 25, and in many cases, especially if English is your second language, 30 to 35 minutes for revising, editing, and proofreading. Make sure you read through your essay at least twice. If you're taking an hour and 15-minute exam, don't worry. Use the same structure, just shorten it. You will start off hour 1 with about 10 minutes of brainstorming. Probably not shorten the outlining very much, still spend about 10 minutes outlining. Then you'll write for about 40 minutes. Leave that last 15 minutes or so for revising, editing, and proofreading. We want to make sure that you revise for big ideas, edit for grammar and style, and proofread. Make any necessary changes by neatly inserting with a caret. Read through your essay several times, but do not recopy it. Remember, your teacher is looking for overall clarity and grammatical correctness. Fix all the errors that you can find, but don't recopy your exam. Think you're finished? Think again. Look back at the exam question. Read it carefully to make sure you didn't misunderstand something, then reread your essay one more time, trying to catch every little error, making sure that you've included whatever was expected of you, such as a title, if applicable, quotation marks, or whatever else. If you have time left, keep reading it over until the exam period is finished. Think back to all the editing techniques you've used previously and put them into action. Many students seem to think that being the first one to leave an exam is a sign of success. In fact, it's usually a sign of failure. Strong students stay the entire class period and use all the time available to them. Done? Hooray! 1 down, dozens more essay exams to go. It will just get easier as you continue to practice, preparing well, managing your test anxiety, synthesizing material, reading the question carefully, and using the writing process during the exam. We hope this tutorial provided you with some useful information. In order to make that information stick in your brain, you need to apply it right away to your own life. The work for this assignment is for you to make your own sample chart and sample essay question about the readings you are doing in your English 1A or 100 class. So return to the CommClass assignment and open up one of the blank charts. Choose the one that best fits your readings. One asks you to chart a single book, and the other is for multiple readings on a theme. Fill the chart in for your readings and print it out. Also, please write a sample exam question. Then you can use the Bloom's taxonomy question words to guide you. You can also look at the sample questions in this tutorial to get a sense of how well developed an English 1A question should be. Remember to give yourself some helpful hints and expectations too. See you soon.